Our next speaker is going to be Rado. He's one of the world's leading kinesiologists. He's an international teacher, presents at many conferences, in-depth researcher, and with more than 30 years of experience is the founder of the K Physis Method. He's got a degree in physiotherapy. He's also studied osteopathy and traditional Chinese medicine. So that's a wonderful combination to bring all those together. He's been on the board of the Italian Kinesiology Association, AKSI, for 8 years. He's also on the board of the International Association of Specialized Kinesiologists, IASK, also for 8 years. And he's now on the board of the International Kinesiology College Personal Development School Board. And that's great to have his experience on board with us. So Marco founded, together with his wife Monica, Physis, the International Institute of Kinesiology based in Italy, but he teaches regularly, also internationally. So he's going to be presenting his topic now, the basics of life. So over to you, Marco.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me to present my work. So this is one of my favorite classes I teach. It was the very first one that I put together myself. I have tried to bring into a kinesiological language something that I have studied, how osteopath uses traditional Chinese medicine. This workshop is the one that I have taught in all 5 continents because it's the very first one. I put this together in 2003, and I have had the chance to teach it in all 5 continents. It's the one that I had put into the PDS. And at the moment, I have only 2 instructors, one here in Italy and one in Germany. Recently, I have changed the name of the workshop because once at a conference, they were introducing a speaker saying that this speaker have studied brain integration, LEAP, neuroenergetic kinesiology, SIPS, stress indicator point system, and Marco classes. So I said, okay, what are Marco classes? So I wanted to give a name so people could recognize not just me, but the method. So I started to call my classes K Physis. The name of my school, the school I've opened with my wife, is called K Physis. So I started to call all my classes K Physis. And this is the foundation of my method. And it's where I teach the fundamental energetic aspect of the human being. I teach 2 main aspects in this workshop. One is the living matrix, and the other one are the 8 extraordinary meridians. The living matrix is defined as the continuous molecular fabric of the organism, consisting of the fascias, the other connective tissues of the body, the extracellular matrix, the integrins, the cytoskeleton, the nuclear matrix, and the DNA. So the living matrix is the connective tissue of the body, seen not only from a macroscopic perspective, but it's the connection between the surface and the very, very depth of the body, because we have a structural continuity starting from the skin down to every single nuclei of every single cell, because through the connective tissue and through this extracellular matrix, the cytoskeleton of each cell, the nuclear matrix, it goes down. We have this continuity that reaches the very center of every cell of the body. So when we are touching a human body, we are touching actually the entire DNA of that person. We are touching all the nuclei of that person. Because this is the connective tissue seen from a cellular level, it's important to remember what is the connective tissue. So the skin, the fascias, the muscles, the tendons and ligaments, but also the bones are all connective tissue. But then we have also the lymph, and the blood is also connective tissue. So it means that almost the entire body is made of connective tissue, because also the majority of the organ structures are also made of the connective tissue. So the living matrix is seeing the entire body from this perspective that the macroscopic and the microscopic of the body is connected bidirectionally. A very important discovery back in the 90s is that we have a type of proteins called integrins that are able to span the cellular membrane. So as you can see in this image, that is in the center, you can see the representation of an average cell. Can you see those black lines going out of the cell? Those are these proteins called integrins. So it means that all the lines that you see inside of the cell, those are the microskeleton made of many different proteins. We have microtubules, microfilaments. We have inside of the nucleus of the cell, we have the chromatin, the histones, the chromatin-associated proteins that are almost the equivalent of the human bones, but they are the one inside of the cell. And this solid structures, these proteins, they crosses directly the cell membrane. So we have a structural continuity between the environment and the cell. So we have a communication highway that goes directly from the environment into the cell, crossing any receptor. So we don't have only a chemical communication between the environment and the cell, but we have also a structural communication through these proteins that crosses the cellular membrane. So think of the Velcro, the Velcro where you have all those filaments. And you can have Velcro on a jacket, you can have Velcro on a shoes as a way to close. So those filaments where you tie your shoes, you can think of all those filaments coming out of the cell. So it means that we have this proteic communication between the cell and its environment. And the limit matrix is exactly this. It's taking into account the environment, because we usually say that we are what we eat. And if we do a transliteration, it means that a cell is what the environment gives to the cell. We cannot study the cellular function without studying also its environment, because the nourishing and the cleansing of the toxins, it can happen only through the environment of the cells. So here you have a section of the living matrix, so where you have that space of communication between the different cells. So you have the pink part that is, general cells, but then in this space, we have the neurons. So you have the yellow cell represents the nervous system. We have the endocrine. We often have a chemical idea of the endocrine system and the immune system, but all the interaction between the neurological system, the endocrine system, and the immune system takes place into a space. But that space can be tied, it can be blocked. So we can have a structural blockage of this communication. And we also have to take into account the psychological aspect. So in the last few decades, especially in homeopathy, they started to talk about the psychoneuroendocrine immunological system, trying to put all together this aspects. So we know in kinesiology that we work on the structural aspect, the biochemical aspect, and the psychological aspect. And structure, it's not a secondary aspect, because if I have a tightness, a blockage of the extracellular space, then the cell cannot be nourished. We cannot remove completely the toxins from the cells. So the structural aspect of the external environment of the cells plays a major role. And if I have a trauma, if I have an emotional experience and this space becomes tight, then the endocrine system, the immune system, and the neurological system might start to not work properly. So it's important to balance also the structure, because in osteopathy, they say that structure controls function. If I have a structural imbalance, then I might have also a functional imbalance. Okay. And we know in kinesiology that what connects the three sides of the triangle of health are the meridians. So I have a question for you. How many meridians do we have in the body? I think that not every kinesiologist knows that, but in the body we have 59 meridians. Okay. Why so many meridians? Well, because we have the 12 primary meridians, we have the 15 low meridians, we have the 12 sinew meridians, we have the 12 divergent meridians, and we have the 8 extraordinary meridians. So if we put all this together, we have 59 different meridians. But in kinesiology, we usually test 14 meridians. So where does this 14 number come from? Where does it come from? Well, we usually work on the 12 primary meridians plus 2 of the 8 extraordinary meridians, because central vessel and governing vessel, they are extraordinary meridians and not, let's say, normal meridians. And what makes the difference between one type of meridian and the other? Okay. So, like always in Chinese medicine, they teach through metaphors and not by chance in English, like in Spanish, like in Italian, and like in many other languages, we use a synonymous of meridian is channel. Why you call the meridian channels? Because the primary metaphor in Chinese medicine is water. And the teachings in Chinese medicine says exactly the same of modern physics. Physics says that matter can manifest in the universe under 3 forms: liquid, solid, and gas. Okay? Water acts in the same way, because I can have the actual water, the same exact molecule, H2O, can also be solid because it might be ice, but it can also be a gas like steam or a cloud. Okay, so these 3 forms of water, these 3 forms of matter represent 3 different forms of energy. And we call this energy Qi, Jing, and the third one is Shen. And I don't have time to get into all the different types of meridians, but the main difference between the primary meridians and the extraordinary meridians is that the primary meridians are related to Qi, the dynamic form of energy, and the extraordinary meridians are related to Jing, that is the dense, solid, let's say, static form of energy. And in kinesiology, which is the structure, which is the tool that we use to assess the integrity of the 12 meridians? The muscle monitoring. Why do we use the muscles? Because the muscles are the most dynamic structures of the body. So it means that they are resonant with the quality of energy of the 12 primary meridians. But if I want to interact with the Jing energy, the energy related to the extraordinary meridians, since it's a dense, solid, and static energy, maybe I should use some other structure more resonant with the quality of energy of the Jing, and this is the bones. Okay. The bones are part of the connective tissue. The bones are highly energetic structures. It's not by chance that every single shamanic tradition uses the bones as a way to communicate with the ancestors. They use bones as a way to get information, to get in contact with other energetic realms, because also the bones has their own type of energy. So we can say that chi is the dynamic energy and it corresponds to the physiological energy. So the meridians, the 12 primary meridians, they are related with the physiology of the primary organs. And Jing, it's a completely different form of energy, and we might call that genetic energy, because the Jing is the energy that we receive at the moment of conception, and is the energy that we will pass to the next generation when we will conceive new life. So it's the innate energy, is the genetic energy. And because I was showing you also the steam, that is the Shen, and Shen represent the mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. Okay. To work on this innate energy, we can use the bones, because you can lose weight, you can gain weight, but you are not able to change the shape and the proportions of your bones. So you can identify the race of a skeleton because of the proportions, because of the shape of the skull, and you can say if that skeleton was of a female or a male because of the shape of the bones. So we have this innate information, this genetic information related to the bones. So if I want to work with the physiological meridians, I will work with the primary meridians that are related to the energy that I can extract from food and air. But if I want to work with the genetic meridians, the innate energy meridians, then I have to change the type of meridians and work with the extraordinary meridians. So what I teach is this relationship between the extraordinary meridians and what are called the osteopathic keys. So as we have one or more muscle related to each primary meridian, the same way we have one or more bone related to the extraordinary meridians. Only central vessel and governing vessel has own acupuncture points. All the other extraordinary meridians are made of other primary meridian points, or even central vessel. Okay? So here on the left, you can see a meridian called Chong Mai. I usually use the Chinese name because translation is always a problem from one language to the other, especially when you go from a symbolic language into an alphabetic language. So Chinese is written with symbols, and we used to say that an image can mean more than 1,000 words. So to translate a symbolic language into an alphabetic language, you often lose some meanings. So the best idea is to not translate it. Chiang Mai, it's related to, you can see here the yellow, the pathway, and it's related to many different primary meridians, because the extraordinary meridians, they wave, they interconnect, they coordinate the functions of all the other meridians. Because one of the primary aspects of the extraordinary meridians, that they are the energetic trace that guides the development of the embryo. They are the very, very first one that shows up during conception. Right after conception, we will start to have the meridians, and they will represent the vertical and the horizontal axis that will give a reference to the cells, knowing in which direction they have to grow. And then they will coordinate the creation of the organs, the function of the organs, and even after the intrauterine life, they coordinate the primary meridians. So in a hierarchy, they are the top of the hierarchy because they were there before the other meridians, and they coordinate and control the meridians. So what we do with the extraordinary meridians, every extraordinary meridian has a key bottom, an opening bottom point that will activate the function of the meridian. Then we can work on the specific points that belongs to that meridian. And then we work on the specific bone structures that are related to that meridian, where that meridian is concentrated. And we use a technique called unwinding, that is a typical technique of craniosacral therapy. So instead of working just on the cranium or on the sacrum, you can use this unwinding technique on every bone of the body. And the bones are part of the living matrix. They are connective tissue. And from the sternum, we can reach every structure of the body. And studying embryology, it's very, very important because what is separate today, at a certain point during the embryological development, they might have been together. Because we have 3 layers of cells that will generate the entire body. So every organ, every structure of the body, at a certain point, they were part of these 3 layers. And what is very interesting, the Changmai meridian, being an extraordinary meridian, is associated with an extraordinary organ. In this case, is the uterus. During the embryological development, the germinative cells that will generate the uterus stays in the sternum for a couple of weeks. So there is an embryological memory between the sternum and the uterus. Working on the sternum, I am working on the uterus. Okay? Because they are still connected, there is this resonance. So even if I place my hands on the sternum, I am touching through the connective tissue the whole body, but I might be affecting the uterus, the uterine cells, the DNA of every cell of the uterus. The connective tissue means that once I touch the body, I'm not touching just that area, but I'm touching the entire body. So through this living matrix concept, through the connective tissue concept, when I touch one part of the body, I'm actually touching the entire body. So I can do an energetic work through the acupuncture points. I can do a more structural work, and structural and energetic at the same time, and release the memory of a trauma. I can release some stagnant toxins in one part of the body. Because in homeopathy, one branch of homeopathy called homotoxicology, they said that the origin of all the diseases is the deposit of toxins. And in osteopathy, they have a theory called the supreme artery. What it means, everywhere in the body, we must have movement, we must have flow. Once we start to have a stagnation, that is the origin of a disease, that it can be stagnation of toxins, that it will become an inflammation, that inflammation through time can start to be a disease. But the origin, according to osteopathy and homeopathy, of all the diseases is a stagnation of toxins. So we can work on this stagnations through an energetic approach and a structural approach, combining the meridians and the living matrix work. Okay, and of course, each of the 8 extraordinary meridians will be connected to one or more meridians, primary meridians. They will be connected to one or more organs, normal organs, extraordinary organs, and different bones in the body. So my work is combining this Chinese medicine approach with the craniosacral work on different bone structures as a way to combine the 2 types of work. And I think that's a good way to, it's a different way of working on the client. And the main thing is working on the perceptions of the kinesiologist. It's a way to not refer on the digital language of balanced muscle, unbalanced muscle, but it's an analogic perception of what is going on in the living matrix of the client. So it's a way to fine-tune yourself with the living matrix of the client. Okay, so this is a very, very fast summary. I hope it was clear what I was saying, but I think that I have only a few minutes. But so because I have touched quite a lot of different topics, I'm here to answer a few questions if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mark. So I have one question. You talked
Yes.
about the uterus being involved with the Chong Mai meridian. What is the equivalent part of the body that's involved for a man?
Okay, so the very same cells that will generate the uterus in a male, they will produce the prostate gland.
Okay, thank you.
So I just found it very interesting. It sort of triggered off this idea of your extraordinary meridians and the bone in relationship to the jing. And it just triggered off a memory within me about the role of the mesenchymal and the hemopoietic stem cells located within the bone.
The extraordinary meridians are related with the extraordinary organs. So as we have primary meridians, we have primary organs. We have extraordinary meridians, and we have 6 extraordinary organs. And one of this extraordinary organ is the marrow, spinal cord, and the bone marrow. So the hemopoiesis, the production of blood cells, the production of the lymphoid cells, the immune cells, they are all connected to the marrow. That it's an extraordinary organ, so it's under the control of the extraordinary meridians.
But the mesenchymal cells also contribute to the formation. You have the 2 stem cells, hemopoietic and the mesenchymal, and the mesenchymal lead to the formation of all our connective tissues within the body. So I'm just saying there's a definite physiological correlation there within that idea of the bone and your concept of jing as it's expressed through the bone.
The bones has a lot of energetic properties because they are a crystal. The phosphate that makes the hard part of the bone, it's a crystalline matrix, and it has the so-called piezoelectric effect. So once you put under stress a bone, that bone produces energy. It produces tiny little electric currents. An American orthopedic back in the 90s, he wrote an entire book called The Body Electric that shows how the connective tissue and the bones can generate electricity. And if we want to describe with Western language what is chi, what is energy, the closest definition is electricity. So we can say that once we put charge, when we activate our muscles, our ligaments, our bones, the body will react, generating tiny little electrical currents that we might say that are the meridians.
Thank you very, very much, Marco.
Thank you.